We're back on the record in cause number 329008, cause number 329010, cause number 329012, and cause number 329014. The court has before it motions to increase bond and impose bond conditions in each one of the cases that has been filed by the state of Texas. As mentioned earlier, the state of Texas is being represented by Mr. Ray Shearer, and who's assistant district attorney. Also, we have Miss Ashley Ramos, who is the assistant district attorney, and we have the district attorney of Jefferson County, Mr. Bob Wordham, or Judge Bob Wordham. We also have present for the defense, the defendant, Mr. Mark Edward Smith, and we have the defense attorney, or the defendant's attorney, Mr. Mark Faggett. And in the motions that has been previously filed, the court will be considering those factors that are listed in Article 17.15, which states rules for fixing amount of bail, and also pursuant to Miller versus State, Miller versus State, 855 Southwest 2nd 92. The trial court has the discretion to increase bail, as stated in that case, and also in that case, it states that there is no exact standard for determining good or sufficient cause for increasing the bail. State, are you ready?
The state is ready, Your Honor.
Defense, are you ready?
We would renew our objections to lack of notice and preparation time. Other than that, we're ready to go.
You ready to go? All right. So at this time, Mr. Shearer, it's your motion. You may go forward.
So at this time, I'm going to invoke the rule.
Okay.
I think one gentleman is here with news media. I don't know who this gentleman
That door is locked, so you got to go through this door. So basically, since the rule has been invoked, what that means is if you are a witness, you have to remain outside. Now, if you're the state's first witness, you can come forward and be sworn in.
The state would like to try Agent Day with the FBI.
Okay, would you come forward?
Yes, sir.
The court reporter is going to swear you in, sir.
Do you want us to have the others swear in altogether?
We could do that. That'd be better.
Okay.
Okay, everyone, please come forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Just do a line straight across here. All the witnesses. No, they still have some more coming. Are these all the witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, at this time, we're gonna ask each and every one of you to raise your right hand, and the court reporter is gonna swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, the rule has been invoked, and basically what that means is that since the rule has been invoked, you are ordered to leave the courtroom and do not re-enter unless instructed to do so by the bailiff or me. You are not to discuss the case or your testimony with other witnesses or anyone else, except the attorneys, You are not to read any report or comment on the testimony or evidence in the case. Any witness violating the instruction is subject to being held in contempt of court. Do we understand? Okay, you may be excused to have a seat outside the courtroom. You may take a seat. And you could adjust that mic.
Thank you.
Mr. Shearer?
Could you please state your name for the record?
My name is Christopher Day
And Mr. Day, how are you employed?
with the Federal Bureau of Investigation,
And how long have you been with the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
approximately 17 years,
Okay, and in that 17 years, what have your duties been?
to act as a special agent, conducting investigations of federal crimes, collecting evidence and executing search warrants, arrest warrants, and other investigative duties.
Okay, I would like to direct your attention to the events that occurred the night of, the morning of March 29th, 2021 at Lamar University. Are you familiar with what we're talking about?
Only through a referral, yes, sir.
Okay, and so you were referred to this case?
Right, we received information of the activities that had occurred on approximately 9 p.m. in the evening hours of March 29th.
Okay, and what did you do as a result of that referral?
March 30th, when we received that, approximately 4:40 p.m., we went to the Jefferson County Jail to interview Mr. Mark Smith.
Okay, and when you got to the jail, what condition did you find Mr. Smith in?
He was in good condition, seemed to be recovering from a rough night, and was in a blanket. Seemed to be okay.
Okay, and so this was several hours into the day. And what did you do when you met with Mr. Smith?
So the first thing we did is introduce ourselves. The interview was recorded, so we had a recording of that interview. We advised him of his Miranda rights and had him sign acknowledgement of those Miranda rights on form.
Okay, and how long did y'all speak with Mr. Day?
With Mr. Smith, we spoke
I'm
with
sorry,
him.
Mr. Smith.
That's good. Approximately from 4:42 to almost 19 or 7:20 p.m.
Okay. So y'all were talking with him for over 2 hours?
Over 2 hours, correct.
Okay. And in that
Before it goes any
conversation,
further, do you have the waiver of his Miranda rights and all that with you today?
I just, I believe I provided a copy of that.
Do you have a copy of that recording with you today?
I believe I provided a copy of that as well.
Do you have anything that's transcribed?
No, sir.
One quick other question. Were you aware that at this time he was under suicide watch?
We asked,
Hold on a minute.
No, go ahead.
No,
I was
Mr.
gonna
No,
give-
Mr. Faggett, I was just gonna say, do you want to take the witness on board? All right?
Yeah, that's what I'll do. Thank you.
okay.
Special Agent Day, were you aware that when he was in the Jefferson County Jail before you got there, he was actively placed on a suicide watch?
we weren't aware until he advised that they had him on watch, but we asked him multiple times about his condition. He adamantly denied any type of suicidal tendencies.
Okay, at least the people at the jail thought that he had some kind of mental impairment, that he needed to be on suicide watch?
If they placed him on suicide watch, I would imagine that they did so for whatever reason they deemed.
Okay. And did, you said he'd had a pretty rough night?
Right, like somebody was drinking.
Okay. And from what you saw, when you observed him, did it appear to you that he was still having signs of that intoxication?
No, sir.
Okay. He just had a bad night drinking?
He just looked disheveled.
did you do any inquiries as to whether or not he was having any mental health difficulties? Did you perform or ask the jail what the status of his mental health was?
We asked him if he was responding appropriately, and he said he was.
I don't have any further questions on that line.
Okay, Mr. Shearer, you may go forward.
Okay. Mr. Agent Day, it's been brought up about the suicidal tendencies. Y'all did indeed speak with him about that?
Correct.
And what was the response on suicidal tendencies?
He absolutely denied any suicidal tendencies whatsoever,
Okay, and did he give a reason why he was not suicidal?
because his religion, the way he was taught, prohibited suicide, and that he could go to hell if he committed suicide, either through himself or through any other mechanisms. by
Okay.
somebody else.
And, okay, and so when you say by any other mechanisms, you're referring to?
Like suicide by cop, like he trying to provoke a police officer to shoot him.
Okay, and in talking with him, did he seem to respond appropriately to answers that you had?
All questions we asked, we felt like his responses were appropriate.
Okay, who was with you at the time you conducted this interview?
Special Agent Shane Smith with the FBI and Special Agent Timothy Abear with the ATF.
Okay, and ATF being alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
That's correct.
Did he make any statements to you that gave you an indication of his intentions that night?
It's hearsay.
Objection overruled.
Yes.
Okay, what were those statements?
In short, he was angry because of being fired and that he went back to his house and loaded up his firearms and was going to Lamar, intentions to hurt someone.
Okay, did he specify who?
He did not.
Did he specify officers?
He did not.
In your 17 years with the FBI, have you ever done threat assessments?
Generally, yes.
Okay, I know this is probably a wild question, but how many people have you interviewed?
My objection is going to be until he proves him up that he has the psychological training and the proper credentials to make a threat assessment, I'm going to object. There's no predicate.
Objection sustained.
How many people have you interviewed?
Hundreds, if not thousands.
So as far as experience goes with Mr. Smith, what would your experience tell you?
He intended to harm someone that night, both through his actions by loading up the firearms, his direct travel to Lamar, what he recalls, and my assessment's also based on how he conveniently does not recall details that would give us more insight.
I'm going to object that speculation. The convenience of his forgetfulness is an assumption that he makes that he's not grounded in any facts and therefore no predicate.
Okay, objection sustained.
Agent Dave, we're here today on a bond hearing, not a guilt, innocence, or anything like that. From your experience, would you feel that if allowed to be out of jail, Mr. Smith would be a danger to either himself or other people?
I do.
Taggart?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Special Agent Day, I've got a few follow-up questions. There's accumulation of things that took place the night before, right? One, he was drinking. Is that what you were told?
That's what I was told. That's what.
And
he
you were
me.
told, I assume that was in the referral that you got from the Lamar Police Department, the other officers involved?
Even more reliable is what Mr. Smith told me.
Okay. And sometimes when we drink, we do stupid stuff, don't we?
Sure.
Yeah, because if I had $1 for every time I did something stupid drunk, I'd be $1 million. I would have to be down here today. At any time, did he ever threaten you when you were interviewing him?
No, sir, he did not.
Okay. And I believe you said that he never threatened a specific individual, did he?
Correct.
And people get angry when they lose their jobs, don't they?
Yes, sir.
And that's something you see more and more and more commonplace, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, have you ever seen individuals that were drunk driving around and they thought about doing something, but they never did it in your years of assessments?
I can't think of a specific instance, but I would agree with you that that happened. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, so in this case, we really did not have any intended victim, did we? There was no specific victim that he said he was going to hurt, was there? Because I think you already told the court he didn't give you any specific people or any intentions like that.
Right. If you're asking me based on the totality of the circumstances, did I think he had an intended victim? He told us he did not, but yet his actions show him actually pulling up behind this police officer. So I think his intended victim was the police officer. That's my assessment, but that is not what he told us. He told us he did not have.
Okay, that's your assessment.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you interview the police officers that were involved in this?
No, sir.
So you don't, as far as what actually transpired the night that he was arrested, you don't know other than what you've been told.
Other than just a brief exchange with the police officer, I have not interviewed that.
Okay. And you understand that the cases we're down here today are like DWIs, unlawfully carrying a weapon, resisting arrest, failure to ID, right?
Correct.
And those are all misdemeanor offenses.
That's what I've been told. Yes, sir.
Okay. And would you agree with me that rather than increasing the bail amount for someone such as Mr. Smith, there are other safeguards of the community like they do in federal court, right? You can order them to house arrest, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You can make sure they wear a monitor.
Right.
You can impose a condition that while he is on bail, that he cannot possess or obtain any firearms, right? They do that every day at the federal courthouse, don't they?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the critical thing with this deal is the access to the weapons, right?
Correct.
Okay. But if he's forced by a bond condition to give those weapons to somebody else to safeguard until these proceedings are over, that's the big deal, isn't it?
It's definitely one of the main factors. Yes, sir.
Okay. And of course, you understand that since he's got a DWI, that the judge can impose a condition that he has to have an interlock device so he can't drink anymore in his vehicle. Are you aware of those kind of things?
I am aware of that. Yes, sir.
That's a good way to keep him from hurting anybody, right?
For alcohol specifically, but not all controlled substances.
Okay. Well, then you have scram device too. You know what that is?
I'm not familiar with that.
That's where if you put it on your leg, and if you do anything at all, drink or drug, it shows it.
The witness doesn't even know what a scram device is.
Objection to staff.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Mr. Chair,
Agent Davis, a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. First of all, he admitted to drinking the night before. When y'all talked with him, did he appear intoxicated still?
No, sir.
Okay. And what you said a while ago that you thought he may be out to hurt a police officer. What drew you to that conclusion?
His contact at the university was initiated upon the police officer, drove to the police officer, and he engaged the police officer. So he didn't make contact with anybody else to our knowledge. We asked him, he specifically told us that he did not make contact with anybody else. He also said told us that he wasn't looking for a police officer, but that his initial contact ended up being a police officer.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you one other thing too. Are you familiar with the term they use called lying and buying when it comes to firearms?
I understand what you're.
Okay. And could you briefly explain to the court what that is?
Well, without a felony conviction or some other specific prohibition that's on the record, any records check won't catch anybody that person is then, without that restriction, would be lawfully allowed to buy a firearm. And so without any felony conviction, that person could go in and lie to a gun dealer and buy a firearm within an hour or so.
So if Mr. Smith were to be bonded out of jail, what would prevent him from buying a firearm?
Nothing.
Couple quick follow-ups. Special Agent Dave, if a judge orders him while on bond, he can't go buy firearms or things of that nature? And with the threat of going back to jail with a severe bonding.
The only objection, he's not asking the question, he's making.
No, let me ask you this.
Okay. Okay, objection sustained.
Okay.
You want to rephrase your question?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. You ran a background check on him before you came to interview him, didn't you?
I believe our definitions of that are different.
No, what I'm talking about, you ran an NCIC check on him, didn't you?
Correct.
Showed no past criminal history, did it?
Right.
Okay. So is sometimes past criminal history an indicator of future conduct?
Yes.
Okay. So what we have is until the time he got arrested out at Lamar, we got a clean record. Is that right?
Yes, the NCIC, according to that, yes.
Okay. Now, has he ever been, to the best of your knowledge, on any watch list for bad behavior through the FBI, ATF, DEA, or anybody like that?
Not before this incident.
Okay. And your biggest concern is him having access to weapons and things like that nature, right?
No, sir.
Okay, what is your concern?
My concern is that he made the admission that he did this because he was under the influence, and he also made the admission that he's always under the influence.
Okay, so he's got a drinking problem.
Well, being under the influence doesn't always mean drinking. It's opioids and illegal narcotics. He says when he's not on one, he's on the other.
Okay.
That is the condition in which he then decides to stay off those. So, and that's my main concern.
I understand that. You understand that the court can impose those conditions where he can be monitored and tested to make sure he's not? That's what they did.
I understand that is a condition, yes.
Okay, I don't have further questions. Thank you.
No further on.
Okay, so there you may step down. May this witness be excused?
He may, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Sure, you can call your next witness. And have a good day, Officer.
Thanks, sir.
Detective Mayor.
State would like to call Officer Kiera Thomas. Officer Thomas?
Ms. Thomas, you've already been sworn in. You can just take a seat and adjust the mic.
Could you spell your first name for me?
First name is Kiera, K-I-A-R-A.
Mr. Shearer, you may proceed.
Okay, Officer Thomas, could you please state your name for the court?
Kiera Thomas.
And how are you employed?
I'm a police officer with Lamar Police Department.
And how long have you been with Lamar Police Department?
2 years and 7 months.
Okay, and what are your duties with Lamar?
Patrolling campus, making sure staff and students are safe, just answering calls, and stuff in Vermont.
And let's direct your attention to the events of the night of March 29th of this year, about 9 o'clock in the evening. Were you working that time?
Yes, sir.
And what happened? Anything unusual happened?
I was just conducting a direct patrol at the Lamar Baptist Church. I was sitting there, maybe for about 5 minutes, and, I noticed a white truck pull right behind me, almost from, probably about like a foot from the back of my patrol unit.
Okay, and that action there, how did it make you feel?
It made me uncomfortable, just with training, it just made me uncomfortable, so I moved.
Okay, and when you say you moved, you,
I moved, and then I proceeded to make a turnaround because it's a one-way, so I had to go and turn around, and then I went right behind the truck at that point, the white GMC.
okay, had it moved from where it first came up behind you?
It had moved forward a little bit after I had moved my unit the first time, and then when I went and pulled around right behind it, then it moved from the Lamar Baptist Church parking lot completely.
Okay, and when you came up behind the truck, did you activate your emergency equipment?
No, sir, I didn't.
Okay, and what was your intention at that point?
I was just usually working on a university campus. We basically have a lot of people ask us for directions. So at that time, I thought that's what that was. So I was just going to make contact and see if that driver needed assistance. And then when it pulled away, I thought it was leaving, and it ended up pulling into the Tom 9 parking lot.
Okay, the Tom 9 parking lot is,
Right next to Lamar Baptist Church.
okay, but that's a university
Yes, sir.
parking?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do at that point?
At that point, when I noticed it pull back around and it parked its vehicle, like the front of its vehicle was basically turned towards mine. I got out of the vehicle and I walked into the parking lot from the Lamar Baptist Church parking lot to the Tom 9 parking lot, and I made contact with the driver at that point.
Okay, and do you see the driver today?
Yes, sir.
Could you please point him out to the board? Okay, and state what he's wearing.
The orange jumpsuit.
Okay, and when you approached the driver, did he speak to you first, or did you speak to him first, or what?
As I was walking up, I smelled the odor of alcohol. It was pretty strong, and I asked him if he needed any help. He was kind of hanging out of the window already, had one hand out of the window. I could see the other hand on the steering wheel. He just seemed agitated already. I was trying to help him, and he didn't seem like he wanted any help. I spoke to him first, and then he kind of responded, but not really responding at all.
Okay, what did he say to you?
I asked him if he needed any help, and he told me that no, he didn't need any help, and I could leave him alone. And then he asked me if I had any children.
He asked you if you had any children?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In your 2 years and 7 months with Lamar PD, have you ever had anybody ask you that before?
No, sir.
Did you find that unusual?
Yes, sir.
Did you find it somewhat threatening?
Yes, sir.
Okay, at that point, you said you had smelled alcohol on him?
Yes, sir.
Did he appear intoxicated?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what did you do after this?
I called for Officer Fontenot to assist me.
Okay, and what prompted you to do that?
Just the question that he had asked if I had any children, it just kind of made me feel uneasy. So when he asked that, I kind of just directed the question and said that I was there to help him.
Okay, so Officer Fontenot was your backup?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what happened between then and when Officer Fontenot arrived?
He was just sitting there, he went, and I asked him for his ID, he wouldn't give that either, so Officer Fontenot was there within like 30 seconds, I want to say. So it wasn't
Okay,
very long.
and when Officer Fontenot arrived, what did you observe then?
Officer Fontenot took over because I wasn't getting anywhere with him for information, so I let him take over to try to talk to him. And at that point, I just observed Officer Fontenot try to speak with him, and he refusing to identify himself or talk to him as well.
Okay, and when you say he refused to identify himself, was he asked a name?
He said his name was Will Dickham.
Okay. So Officer Fontenot, what did he do?
He asked him to step out of the vehicle. He tried to tell him to open the door. He wasn't opening the door, so Officer Fontenot had to open the door for him. Still was refusing to get out of the vehicle.
Okay, and when you say refusing to get out of the vehicle, does that mean just sitting there refusing to get out, or what?
Yeah, he was kind of holding on to the steering wheel, and Officer Fontenot was actually trying to remove him from the vehicle, and he would just pull himself back in.
Okay, so they were tussling, you could say? Okay, what did you do?
Officer Fontenot noticed that there was guns in the vehicle, and he immediately notified me of that, and I went to the other side of the vehicle and removed those weapons from the vehicle.
Okay, and you said guns plural?
Yes.
Okay, just, I know this happened rapidly, but just in your mind, how many guns were there?
For what I know, I pulled out at least 6, and we ended up finding another.
Okay, so 6 long guns, handguns.
I pulled out 2 assault rifles, AK-47s, and then probably about, I think it was 2 revolvers, and maybe a handgun or 2.
Okay. So was Mr. Smith eventually taken into custody?
Yes, he was taken into custody.
Okay, and what was he charged with?
Failure to identify, DWI, and
The unlawfully carrying a weapon?
unlawful carry.
Okay. No further, Your Honor.
Second, you may proceed.
Yes. Officer Thomas, did you issue a report before you came here today? Did you write a report that's been typed up and turned in?
Yes, sir.
I say that. Did you review that before you testified?
Did I review it?
Yes.
Not here, but at the station, yes.
Okay. You got it? Thank you. I want to run through some things with you. Bear with me because this has all been going pretty quick.
Yes, sir.
You've been an officer for 2 years and 7 months,
Yes, sir.
and I assume that you went to some regional academy.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what academy was that?
The Lamar Institute of Technology Police Academy.
Okay. Do you have any advanced training since graduation from that academy?
Just classes that I went to, that we have to get 40 hours every 2 years.
Okay. Do you don't have any advanced training in psychology and the analysis of anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay. And do you have any, you had this, I guess you had the standard field sobriety test training and all that stuff?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any advanced training on that?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, he pulled up behind you, right?
Yes, sir.
In the white truck.
Yes, sir.
Did at any time did his vehicle attempt to make contact with your vehicle? Hit you from the rear?
He didn't hit me, no, sir.
Okay. Now, I understand that after that contact, you pulled out and he pulled into the T9 parking lot?
After I attempted to make contact with him at Lamar Baptist Church parking lot.
Okay. And you said when you saw him, he seemed a little bit agitated.
Yes, sir.
At any time during that first and initial contact, did he physically threaten you in any way?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, when you first observed him in the vehicle, were there any weapons in the front seat?
Not that I could see.
Okay. at any time during your contact with him on that night, did he threaten to shoot you or make a reach for any of those weapons?
Not that I can recall, not that I can remember.
Okay. Right. And I understand what you recall from that night is once you got Officer Fontenot there,
Yes,
Officer Fontenot was having trouble getting him to cooperate and getting him out of the vehicle, right?
yes, sir.
Okay. And Officer Fontenot went and ran from what you told me. You then went around and got the weapons out of the back seat.
No, they were on the front passenger side.
You just told me there weren't any weapons in the front seat.
Not that I could see when I made my initial approach when I was first speaking with him.
Well, I thought you just told us earlier they were in the back seat.
No, sir.
That at any time in response to what you and Officer Fontenot were doing, did he ever point a firearm at either you or Officer Fontenot?
No, sir.
Okay. They were simply laying there, and I understood your previous testimony, they were in the back, but from what I'm reading your report now, they were in front of the center console?
Some were on the floorboard, some were on the passenger side seat, and one was on
Okay.
at least one or two.
And if he would have intended to harm a police officer, what was for him there to prohibit him from getting that gun when he first came up to you? Nothing was there.
I'm not sure, sir.
Okay. Now, you seem to be concerned that he asked you if you had children.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You don't know what he was thinking, do you?
Through training from the academy and other classes I went to, just that question made me feel uncomfortable.
I understand, but that making you feel uncomfortable is not an indication he's going to physically harm you, is it?
No, sir.
Okay. And you and I both know that it's not against the law in Texas, is it, to carry an AK-47 in your vehicle, is it?
No, sir.
Was he even able to really function at all due to the level of his intoxication? Because it looked to me like he failed every one of the standard field sobriety tests, right?
Yes, sir.
And he was even unable to complete them.
Yes, sir.
And to you, would that indicate a high level of intoxication?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you happen to know if we have blood results yet? Did y'all draw blood from him that night?
No, sir.
Okay. And once again, your only training is you're basically police academy testing training. Police academy training.
As well as my TEFL classes that I'm required to take every year. Yes, sir.
Okay. And thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Oh,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
okay, Mr. Sheriff.
I'm going to read it after you ask her. I'm going to ask her some more. Okay.
Officer Thomas, just a couple of quick questions. First of all, this truck that he was in, was it a standard cab, extended cab, crew cab? Do you recall?
I can't recall.
Okay. The weapons that were in the truck, were they within his reach?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you just didn't notice them when you first approached the truck?
Yes, sir. I'm
Okay.
kind of short, so I didn't,
Okay, and was it daylight or dark?
it was nighttime.
Okay, was it a lit parking lot?
It wasn't lit.
Did you have any means of illumination?
My flashlight, but again, the truck was pretty high and I'm kind of short, so I couldn't see inside the vehicle initially.
Okay, and when Officer Fontenot started struggling with him, what did Mr. Smith do?
He was just gripping the steering wheel and pulling himself back in and kind of pushing him away, trying to basically pull himself back inside the truck.
Okay, did you see his right hand? Could you see his right hand?
Yes, sir, it was on the steering wheel.
Okay,
He moved it a few times.
Okay.
But
okay. And so when you went around to the other side, what was your goal at that point?
to remove all the weapons that were in his immediate reach.
Okay. No problem.
Okay. Terrence?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple more real quickly. Never once in any of the incidents that night did he attempt to point a weapon at you or Officer Fontenot did.
No, sir.
Okay. And if they're sitting right there in the console, in the floorboard, in the seat, that's something he could have easily done if he'd chosen to do so, right?
That's a possibility.
Yeah, probability, right?
Yes, sir.
If he'd wanted to really hurt somebody, he could have done it, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, one of the biggest issues you had that night was his level of intoxication, right?
Yes, sir.
And perhaps the comment he made to you about having children was a result of the intoxication?
I'm not sure, sir.
Okay. And he wasn't rude or disrespectful in any way, was he?
When we first talked, not in our
Okay.
initial encounter, but,
I understand later on, he got a little fight, and he didn't want to let y'all handcuff him and stuff. Is that right? Okay. Did anyone that night get physically harmed as a result of his conduct?
no, sir.
So there was no victim. And once y'all subdued him and put him under arrest, there was no threat to the community.
Correct.
Okay. In one way that perhaps if there's concerns about what he may do while he's out on bail, are you familiar with the bail procedures and the conditions the court can impose?
No, sir.
Maybe order him to house arrest and put him on an ankle monitor, things like that. Do you think those would be good?
Not sure, sir.
Okay, I'm here for the questions.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Thomas, when you encountered him in y'all's time dealing with him, did he make any statements about being shot?
He did tell us that we could shoot him after he was already in handcuffs.
Okay, and so he was, what would you take from that statement?
I would take that he wanted us to shoot him.
Okay, so like suicidal?
Yes, sir.
No further comment.
And once again, he never threatened you or Officer Fontenot.
No, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Shear?
No further.
We have nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay. May this witness be excused? Mr. Shear?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Fager? May this witness be excused?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Thomas, we'd like to thank you for the testimony here today. You are excused. And remember, you're still under the rule. Oh. Come on. Mr. Shearer, you may call your next witness.
State would like to call Corporal Nicholas, I'm sorry, Officer Nicholas Fontenot Lamar.
Officer Fondo, you've already been sworn in. Just have a seat and you can adjust the mic.
Is it M-I-C-H-O-L-A-S?
N-I-C-H-O-L-A-S.
Okay.
Mr. Shearer, you may go forward.
Could you please state your name, Director, please?
My name is Officer Nicholas Ray Fontenot. I've been with Lamar for 2 years.
Okay, thank you. And in your time with Lamar, have you worked anywhere else besides Lamar University as an officer?
I worked as a deputy constable for the precinct 4 of Orange County.
Okay. And what are your duties with Lamar University?
Patrolling campus and making sure that the students and staff are safe at all times.
Okay, what hours do you normally work?
I normally work, so Sunday, Mondays, and Tuesdays, I work 12-hour night shifts from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and Wednesday nights from 6 p.m. to midnight.
Okay, so on the night of March 29th, were you working that night?
Yes, sir.
That's this year?
Yes, sir.
And was anything unusual that occurred that night?
The only thing that unusual that occurred was the fact that I had seen the white truck pull up to Officer Thomas.
Okay, so you had actually seen the truck?
Yes,
pull up?
I was in the opposite I was in the George 2 parking lot opposite of the Lamar Baptist Church parking lot. I was sitting in that parking lot talking to my wife because my wife had came and surprised me at work. So I had seen him pull up next to her.
Okay, and between you and Officer Thomas, what was between y'all?
What do you mean?
As far as, was it open way, driveway, parking lot? What?
There was so there's Roth Christopher, there's the north and south of Roth Christopher. So there was the road and then the median and then another road and then Lamar Baptist Church. So I was just I was literally just 2 streets across from her.
Okay, so it's not like it was just an open space there, but there were barriers, that's where I'm
Well, I
getting
wouldn't say barriers, it was just the median of the grass.
at. Okay. And what did you observe with Officer Thomas?
I just observed her getting out of the vehicle and going up to his window, and then as she had gotten out with him, so that's whenever she had called me. That's whenever dispatch had called me over.
Okay, so did you hear her on the radio?
Whenever she got out with him, yes.
Okay, and when she got out and she called dispatch, did you hear her then?
Yes.
Okay, how long have you worked with Officer Thomas?
The full 2 years and 3 months that I've been there.
Okay, and did she sound different?
No, not at the time. She had just called for backup because she had known that he was intoxicated because of alcohol on his breath.
Okay, and what did you do?
I responded as soon as she ended up calling over there. I responded immediately. It took me not even 5 seconds to get over there because I was right across the street from her. And I got out of my unit and I activated my body camera and I walked up to the vehicle. And his window was already rolled down. Both of his hands at the time were at I guess 10-2. And then I had shot a flashlight at him and I had asked him to look at me. He wouldn't look at me. And then I tried to attempt to get his identification, and all he told me was Will. He said, "My name is Will Dickham." That's pretty much all he said at that point. And then I tried to open the door and it was locked. So I attempted to ask Mr. Smith that if he would get out of the vehicle for me. And I attempted several times to ask him to get out of the vehicle, and he wouldn't do it. He just continuously was slurring at me, yelling profanities towards me and my fellow officer. And then that's whenever I reached in, I locked the door and I opened it. And then after that, I wouldn't say he was trying to reach for anything, but I was just following the movement of his right hand. And it was just, kind of all over the place. And that's when I observed the AK-47 sitting on his, or kind of, it was kind of candid on his seat. And that's whenever I observed it. And then I asked Officer Thomas, can you go on the other side and grab the assault rifle? Because that's the only one that I had seen at the time. I didn't see any other ones.
Okay. And so when you opened the door and stuff, did you ask him to step out of the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, and did he step out of the vehicle?
No. He told me he didn't want to.
Okay, and how many times did you ask him?
Oh, several, I can't even count.
Okay.
It was multiple times.
As a result of his refusal to step out of the vehicle, what did you do?
So as Kira was taking all the guns out of the vehicle, I started to attempt to try to assist him out of the vehicle, and he just constantly refused to get out. He would have one hand on the steering wheel, and then I'm sitting here trying to assist him out and jerk him out of the vehicle, and he wouldn't listen to me.
Okay.
He constantly.
Was he pulling against you?
Yes.
Okay, was he, his right hand, you said it was on the steering wheel or?
Right.
Okay, and the weapons that were in the vehicle, would they have been within his reach?
Yes.
They were, do you recall what type of truck it was? If it was a standard cab or?
It was a 4-door white, I want to say GMC Sierra
Okay,
pickup truck.
okay. And did he make any statements about why he was there or anything?
No, he did not. Not at the time.
Did you search him after he was taken into custody? What did you find on his person?
There was in his, I want to say in his right pocket, he had his wallet, $3 in cash on him, some debit cards that he had, and his license on him. And then in his left pocket, I want to say he had, I think 7 or 8 .45 caliber bullets.
Were these 45 caliber bullets, were they in like a magazine or were they loose?
No, they were loose in his pocket.
Okay. And they were in his left pocket?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Do you know if he's right-handed or left-handed?
I'm not sure.
And after he was taken into custody, did you have anybody else come to the scene?
My supervisor, Corporal Jackson, had came out to the scene, and his PPO, Danielle Norris.
Okay. What was Mr. Smith like when you were dealing with him?
Very, very belligerent. He was incoherent, slurring his words, and just constantly yelling profanities out at us.
Okay. Do you recall exactly how many weapons he had?
He had, he had two handguns, 3 revolvers, and 2 assault rifles.
Okay. And did you ask him about the weapons?
I didn't at the time, no.
Okay. No further.
Second.
Officer Fontenot,
Before you came to testify to that.
Yes.
it's my understanding you kind of saw the white truck and then Officer Thomas's unit.
Yes, you're correct.
From your observations across the way, did you see Mr. Smith attempt to hurt Officer Thomas in any way?
No, I didn't see him at the time. I didn't see him. All I seen was a truck pull up to her vehicle,
Okay,
and she had called her back up.
okay. And did he attempt to run his truck into the rear of her vehicle?
No.
Okay. Now, you've been with the Lamar Police Department for 2 years and 3 months?
Yes, sir. About
And-
5 times, sir.
And before that, you were deputy constable at precinct 4 over in Orange County?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how long have you been in law enforcement?
I've been in law enforcement now for 2 years and 6 months.
Okay, you got your training at the LIT Academy?
No, sir, I trained with Jefferson County and Jefferson County.
Okay. Were you a correctional officer before you made the move?
No, sir.
Okay, now. Let's go through a couple things. As I understand it, when you got there, you saw his hand, his right hand. Did he ever attempt to grab any of those weapons that were in his vehicle?
I do not know.
Okay, you didn't see him do it, did you?
No.
He didn't reach over and grab one and point it at you, did he?
No.
Okay. Now, let's talk about a couple things. He had AK-47s?
Yes, he had two of them.
Okay. It's not illegal, is it, to transport one of those in the cab of your truck, is it, under Texas law?
No, sir, it's not, but under circumstance.
Right, but he didn't threaten you with those AK-47s at all, did he?
No.
Okay. Now, as far as the handgun goes, he never got a handgun pointed at you or Officer Thomas or anybody else, did he?
No, not right now, no.
Okay. Now, which left pocket, was it the shirt pocket or the,
No, it was his cargo shorts pocket.
Okay.
His left cargo shorts pocket, that he was wearing.
okay. And once you saw the firearms, Officer Smith was able to safely remove them?
Officer Thomas, yes.
I'm sorry, Officer Thomas?
Yes.
Okay. And at any time when she was trying to get those weapons out of the truck, did he attempt to stop her?
No, the only thing he had done, he had looked over at her and he had took his hands off the steering wheel.
Okay, but he didn't try to hit her, didn't try to grab a gun, didn't try to do any of that, did he?
No.
Okay. And if he wanted to shoot a policeman that night, he could have done it because he has a lot of guns, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And once you told him to keep his hands on the steering wheels, he did that, didn't
For a little while, yes.
he? Okay. And then when it came, when y'all started tussling because wouldn't get out, that's when he took his hands off?
Yeah, no, as I was tussling with him to get him out of the vehicle, he constantly refused to get out of the vehicle. His right hand was staying on the wheel and he was forcing himself back in the vehicle.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. You were eventually able to secure him and get him out of the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Okay. During this whole incident, did he ever threaten you in any manner? I want to talk to you about what we're here about today. He was obviously intoxicated.
Right.
Okay. And he obviously didn't want to get out of the car, right?
Right.
Obviously resisted arrest and didn't tell you his true name, right?
Right.
Okay. Did he actually do anything else to society that night?
Yeah, if you remember circumstances, yes. Whenever we brought him to the hospital, he was yelling racial slurs at the nurses and racial slurs at my fellow officer, yes.
I understand that. But did he ever attempt to harm anyone else in society other than the fact he was drinking that night and he was on the road?
No.
Okay. In the way that I assume that you've arrested probably more than one drunk driver at Lamar, right?
Yeah.
Since it is a college campus? Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, did you try to perform the standard field sobriety test on him?
I did not, Officer Kier Thomas did.
Okay, and he bombed it, right?
Right.
As a matter of fact, he was so loaded, he couldn't even complete it.
Yes, sir. Right.
Okay, which means a high level of intoxication.
Right.
Okay, now, the way, are you aware of the terms and how judges can set bonds and stuff?
Your Honor, we're going to object. That's outside the scope of his testimony.
Objection sustained.
Okay. Would one thing that you could do to prevent him from drinking and driving if he's released on bail, you can put an interlock device in their vehicle, right?
Your Honor, once again, we object. It's outside the scope of his testimony.
Objection sustained.
Have you seen cases that you've been involved in where the person gets arrested for DWI and the court orders him a condition of bond to have an interlock device?
Negative, no.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you for coming today.
Mr. Chair.
Officer Fontenot, Mr. Faggart in his cross-examination brought something up that I want to ask you further about. You said that he was hostile that night.
Yes, sir.
Approximately how long were you in contact with Mr. Smith?
So we were, okay, so we were, I would say the call went out at 9:14 PM, I think that night. And then we were in contact with him until we arrived at the jail, maybe 11:30, almost midnight, I think. And at the hospital, he was constantly yelling racial slurs at everybody, telling everybody, excuse my language, but fuck you to everybody. And just a bunch of other, profanities. He did it before I brought him to the hospital. Whenever EMS arrived, he was constantly yelling profanities at the EMS. And then got to the hospital, he was doing it again. He even did it to the doctor that was trying to evaluate him, and the nurses as well. And then once we got to the jail, he stopped.
Okay, let me ask you this. You've already said that he was dropping the F-bomb. It's pretty, what racial slurs was he using?
He was.
I think that's irrelevant as far as setting the bonds. If he's not physically threatening anybody, if we're going to make this a race case, if this is what we're doing, that's morally inappropriate, Your Honor.
Okay, objection sustained.
Okay, so during that time, you said that he was hostile towards everybody. Was he hostile towards you?
I mean, I want to say in a way, yes, he was, because he was refusing, he was resisting arrest. He was, I wouldn't say I wouldn't say he was being aggressive in that way, but a fear of our officer safety, yes.
Okay, and did he cuss you?
Same,
Did he curse you?
yes.
And he cursed, you said, hospital staff?
He cursed EMS, hospital staff, and hospital staff, yes.
Okay. And then you said that this continued until you got to the jail?
Right, yes.
What happened when you got to the jail?
He was pretty calm at the jail.
No further.
Mr. Faggart.
I would assume that in your 2+ years at Lamar, you had to encounter on more than one occasion somebody who's intoxicated cussing at you, right? Okay. And you didn't, that's just part of the job. And as difficult as it is, and sometimes insulting as it is, it's part of the job.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean somebody's going to try to hurt you, does it? Thank you, Your Honor, for the question.
Okay.
Further question.
Okay. Mr. Sheriff, that is witness to be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Officer Fontenot, you may be excused. And just a reminder, make sure that you continue to obey the rule that you're under.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you may be excused and have a good day.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Sheriff?
Your Honor, state would like to call Corporal Daniel Jackson.
Daniel
Daniel, D-A-N-I-O-N.
sorry, Kim.
Mr. Jackson, you've already been sworn.
Yes, sir.
You please have a seat and you can adjust the mic.
Where's your first name?
Danny,
Okay.
Danny, yes, ma'am.
Or Damien,
Danny,
Danny.
A-N.
Danion.
Mr. Sure, you may go forward.
Corporal Jackson, obviously we've got your name now, Danian.
Yes, sir.
And could you please tell the court how you're currently employed?
I'm the corporal with Lamar University. In August, it'll be exactly 4 years. I'm the night supervisor for the day shift.
Okay, and as a night supervisor, what are your duties?
Duties to ensure safety of the university, my officers, daily patrol functions, to make sure that the university is kept in peace, to make sure safety is ensured around the campus and around the neighborhoods.
Okay, let me direct your attention to the night of March 29th of this year. Anything unusual occur that night?
March 29th, Monday. Yes, sir. We had a call. I actually had a training officer that night, and we were out on a traffic stop. The training officer was training. When I heard the call over the radio, another officer needed to ask for assistance. Well, she stated that she was out with the mail in the parking lot. Due to the fact that we're on traffic stops for safety, I like to not cover the radio traffic so that officers can, ensure that the training with the traffic stops or even traffic stop. I heard the other officer come back and say that she needed assistance on a call. I told her to hold the traffic again. I did not know the severity of what they had. She called the third time and I heard the severity in her voice this time. We cleared the traffic stop that we were currently on and went to her location. Upon arriving to that location, there was a white pickup truck surrounded by two police police vehicles. I get out, I asked the officers what's the situation. They explained to me their situation, and I asked, well, where is the driver of the vehicle? They said he's on the ground in cuffs in front of the vehicle. Walk around, check. There's a male subject sitting on the floor, laying on the ground in cuffs, with some items on the hood of his truck.
Okay, and do you see that subject today?
Yes, sir.
And could you please point him out and say what he's wearing?
It's an orange jumpsuit with orange Crocs.
Okay. And as a supervisor, what were your duties at this point?
Make sure that he was safe first and foremost, make sure that my officers were safe, and then dissect the situation to make sure that everything was filed in the right functions.
Okay, and as part of that, did you handle any evidence?
Yes, I did.
Okay, what did you do?
After the gentleman in can I call his name more?
Sure.
Mr. Smith, after Mr. Smith was away from the scene, I went back to the vehicle where the majority of the evidence was. When I approached the passenger side of the white pickup truck, there were five. There were two long guns, known as AK-47s on the front seat, driver's seat. There were 4 handguns on the floorboard of that same pickup truck.
Okay.
Okay.
And just cut to the chase, how many guns were in that truck?
In total, I found 7.
7?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and as part of handling firearms that are evidence, did you ensure that they were safe?
Yes, sir. I took one by one to the back of the truck, the vehicle that they were found in. I had the officer stand on the side of me as I cleared her, showed an open chamber, emptied all the ammunition separately, bagged the ammunition, and I removed one gun and put it in my patrol vehicle one by one on each firearm that was found in the vehicle.
Okay, and I'm gonna ask you, what was the condition of those weapons as far as the ammunition in them?
all the firearms that were found in the vehicle were loaded, ready to be fired at any given point in time. That's why I made sure that it was safe for me to remove the vehicle, remove the firearms one at a time to place them behind the vehicle because they were loaded and ready to go. And I didn't want to misfire, a misfire on anybody for any reasons.
Okay, and when you say loaded, there was a magazine, a loaded magazine in each one?
In the AK-47 brown handle, there was a 30-round magazine. I think there may have been, if I recall right, there may have been 24 to 26 rounds, assault rifle rounds in that magazine. And the magazine that was with the black AK-47, there was another round a magazine round of 30 with approximately 24 to 26 rounds in it, with one bullet stuck in the chamber. So that one, the one that was stuck in the chamber on that one, I saved it to last, to bring back to last to try to clear it because it was taking a little longer. Everything else, the revolvers that were found, the hammers were cocked backwards and placed on safety. I mean, a 3-year-old probably could click the safety button and fire a pistol.
So if a person were going to transport firearms,
Lockbox, safety, even ammunition shops are giving away free locks, key locks for safety reasons. You place them in the inside of an open chamber to ensure that, anybody using the weapon or seeing the weapon can, not fire the weapon. But all weapons should be transported in a lockbox, let's say.
what about the chambers of these guns? Did any of them have a round in the chamber?
All 7 of those firearms had rounds in the chamber.
Okay, and in your 4 years with Lamar, have you had previous law enforcement experience?
No, sir.
Okay, as part of your firearms training with the police academy and with Lamar University, how do they teach y'all to carry your guns when you're on duty?
When you're on duty, your sidearm or your long gun?
Your sidearm.
In your holster, but it's locked with a retention and it's in a safe. If it's in a safe place, you can't get to it unless
Right, okay.
go through safety mechanisms or whatever on duty.
Round in the chamber?
Round in the chamber.
Okay, now you mentioned your long gun. You have a long gun that you carry on patrol?
Yes, sir.
And how is that carried?
In the locked safe in the middle of the patrol vehicle.
Is it round in the chamber? Or?
It's around in the chamber because we are law enforcement.
Okay.
Because we're all law enforcement, we do
Okay.
keep round in the chamber.
And so the purpose is?
To stop the threat of anybody else presenting a threat to society.
But as far as using the weapon for an immediate use, you would describe it as?
Yeah.
Okay. How much ammunition did you recover?
The two 30-round magazines, I found 24 to 26 assault rifle rounds in those magazines. There was 5 rounds of 38 special in each of the revolvers, capacity on those revolvers. Those handguns were 6 to 7 in the magazines that were in place, along with the one in the chamber. So if the gun says 8 and 1, it's 1. That means there's 7 in the magazine and 1 in the chamber. And I found a bag of 38 special, approximately 98 bullets, which was a single count, so I know it was 98. 38 rounds that were in a bag placed on the driver's side, on the passenger side of the seat. There was 7 38 shells that was on the hood of the vehicle when I first drove up, which means that Mr. Smith had the rounds on his person at the time of the incident.
Okay, and if somebody testified that there were rounds in his pocket, that would indicate where those came from?
Yeah.
Okay. You did not search Mr. Smith?
No, I did not.
Okay. And short of did you continue, or did you search the truck any further?
I did.
Did you find anything else of noteworthiness in there?
Yes, I continue to search the white truck, found two compartments, because of the center console. I found, in the second console, I found a Lamar University parking placard, which is staff,
Uh-huh.
faculty and staff, which is what I got the dispatcher to run the number off the parking placard. She gave me the return. She said it was nothing. I found three sets of keys. I actually pulled all the keys out of the vehicle as well, not knowing the situation after the keys, and I submitted all of it for evidence.
Okay, and you mentioned the placard and the keys. Did you later learn the significance of these?
Yes, sir.
What was that significance?
That the owner of the vehicle, or Mr. Smith, was a former employee of Lamar University.
Okay, and the keys themselves, did you recognize them or did they look familiar?
Recognized none of the keys. That's why I confiscated all of them and submitted them all for evidence, because I had no idea of the keys.
Did you later learn,
Yes, sir.
what were those keys?
I don't know exactly what those keys were, but I later learned that a master key from the university itself was still missing and hadn't been found.
Okay, and do you know if, as an employee of Lamar University, whether or not Mr. Smith would have had a master key?
If he worked in facilities and maintenance, as the dispatcher advised me, yes.
Okay, what would that master key do?
The master key would allow him access to every building on the university's campus
Okay,
at any hour of the day.
okay, no further on.
Mr. Packard?
Yes, Your Honor. Corporal, is it Jackson?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, I'm Mark Thacker. I've got a few questions for you. Before you came to testify, did you issue a report in your supervisory role that night?
Yes, sir.
And did you review that report before you testified?
Yes, sir.
Okay, may I see that report? First of all, as to the circumstances of his actual arrest, you were not there, you didn't witness anything, correct?
Right,
You
right,
didn't see anything.
correct.
Were either of the officers harmed physically in any way during that arrest?
Not to my knowledge. I
Okay.
didn't see anything.
And did he threaten them with any serious bodily injury during that arrest?
Prior to my knowledge, I don't know.
Okay. Did he pull a pistol or any of these weapons that you're talking about today on any of your officers that night?
No.
Okay. Now, obviously, he was intoxicated when you got there?
Correct.
Okay. Now, we're gonna talk about that, but I want to go through a whole bunch of stuff that you're talking about, okay?
Okay.
What is the extent of your firearms training?
My firearms training, I am qualified through my department. I'm a certified firearms instructor through the Angelina Sheriff's Department, Angelina County. My firearms instructor was Allison Lindeman. And I've been a firearms instructor since December.
Okay, so you're pretty knowledgeable about how all these weapons operate and stuff, right? Okay, first of all, it's not against the law to have an AK-47 in your vehicle in Texas, is it?
No, sir.
And it's not against the law to have 24 or 26 rounds in a magazine, is it? There's no limit on the amount of bullets you can have in an AK-47 magazine, is there?
No, sir.
Okay. As a matter of fact, those weapons, that's the kind of stuff that the government's trying to ban now, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Your Honor, objection, he's getting them testified outside.
I'm sorry,
Objection sustained.
that's bad because some people in the government don't want to ban. But the reality of it is the fact that he had the AK-47s, there was nothing unlawful about that night, was there?
I mean, people just ride around in vehicles with AK-47s in their vehicles every day.
Some people do.
Yeah, but for what reason? If- I
Well,
mean,
it's not, but I'm getting
murder.
at, it's not unlawful, is it?
No, it's not unlawful.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the pistols. If you don't have a license to carry, that's unlawful, right?
Correct.
Okay. And those charges were filed against him, weren't they?
Yes,
Okay. And as far as the amount of ammunition, under Texas law, there's no prohibition in owning 2,000 rounds of 45 ACP or 38 special or 223 or the NATO rounds that go in the AK-47s, is there?
okay, yes, sir.
So this, having ammunition is not illegal, is it?
Listen,
Okay. Now, you want, okay, now. And I read in your report that basically the standard field sobriety testing was called off because he was so drunk he couldn't complete it.
correct.
Okay. And I would assume based on your firearms training, that if someone wanted to harm somebody that night with all those guns in the vehicle and your officer is in close proximity, if he was out to shoot an officer, he certainly could have if he had chosen to do so, right?
Correct.
Okay. He did not do that, did he?
No, sir.
And not one of your officers said he threatened him with the use of a firearm, did they?
I believe because I was not there at the time of the initial stop. I do believe my officers used their training to de-escalate the situation and remove.
Sure, but he didn't ever point a gun at him, he didn't try to shoot or anything
No,
like
they
that?
never did.
And let's talk about the keys. While y'all were doing all this arrest and the search of the vehicles, the fact that he may have worked for Lamar was not even known, was it?
Right.
Until after the fact.
Yeah, the dispatcher called me back later after I asked her to run the placard, the Lamar placard.
Right.
She called me back about 5 minutes later stating that he was a former employee. And at that point in time, I called my supervisor and the goal was, let's go ahead and just remove all the keys because we don't know about facilities keys. We don't know what they look like. We don't know what the maintenance keys look like or the master key for the Lamar University at that point. So let's remove all of them.
Okay, when did that conversation take place?
After the guns were being removed, or during the guns were being removed.
Okay, but the initial stop or anything like that, that wasn't even an issue, was it?
No.
Okay, he made no specific threat toward any of his former bosses or anything else that night, did he?
I don't know what this conversation was prior to me getting there.
Okay, but as far as his actual bosses and stuff?
As far as I got there, I don't know what his actual comments were before I got there, but as far as
You and your
me
officer.
getting there, I didn't hear any threats.
Okay,
Not towards him, I heard threats to my office.
okay. And you don't know where this missing master key is or even that he has it?
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass the witness. Well, Jackson, we do have one common question. Lamar University, is that in Jefferson County?
Yes, sir.
And is that in the state of Texas?
Yes, sir.
And no further. And I believe it's, once again, a lot of these weapons here, that he had with him.
Objection, he's not asking a question.
I'm sorry, let me rephrase it.
Okay, get this sustained.
You can have all the guns in your vehicle you want to in Texas, except for these pistols he had, right?
If you have a license to carry,
You can.
you can have any weapon in your vehicle, but you don't, there's nobody riding around the United States, not even military guys with AK-47s in the vehicle.
Yeah, well, would it surprise you to find out that some people do that because they shoot them all the time?
They do, and that's what we're doing our best to try to stop it.
I understand. I appreciate your good work. Thank you.
No further comment. Wiz to be excused.
Okay, Mr.
I don't
Baggett.
have anything further. He may be excused.
Mr. Jackson, you're excused. Be mindful that you're still under the rule. All right, and you have a blessed day.
Thank you so much.
Here, you can call your next witness,
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to call Officer Todd Guidry.
Todd Gidfrey. Okay, Mr. Gidry, you previously been sworn in. You can adjust the mic. Mr. Shearer, you may go forward.
Could you please state your name, please?
Officer Todd Guidry from Newland Police Department,
And how long have you worked for Nederland Police Department?
approximately 6 years.
Okay, and in that 6 years, let me back up. Where did you go to the police academy?
The regional police captain,
Okay.
LIT.
Okay, and prior to that, have you had any law enforcement experience?
I worked for the Jefferson County Correctional Facility for 5 years and went on patrol for less than a year when I transferred to Newland.
Okay, and you prior military?
No.
And reason we're here is because we're having a bond hearing on events that occurred at Lamar University on March 29th of this year. Were you there?
No.
Okay. In the room here, do you see anybody familiar?
Yes.
Who do you see?
Mr. Mark Smith,
Okay, and when you say Mr. Mark Smith, what's he wearing?
he's wearing an orange JCCF jumpsuit.
Okay, and how do you know Mr. Smith?
Well, I'm really kind of stretched to see the relevance. He wasn't there. He doesn't know what took place for the alleged offenses this man is alleged to have committed. So if he's not there, he didn't see it, what can he offer?
Well, Your Honor, if you would allow the state, we would tend to that, and it would become evident.
Okay, objection overruled.
How do you know Mr. Smith?
Myself and several other officers were called to his house on the 23rd, I believe, of March for a welfare concern. His wife had called the police department.
Your Honor, this is way outside of the scope of this hearing. I got no 404B, whatever it is. Notice they're going to use somebody that has something that's totally unrelated to the incidents in question for which this court is setting a bar.
Your Honor, this is.
It's
a bond
way
hearing,
outside of it.
And this is information that the
Okay.
state feels like the court needs to have in determining.
Okay,
the bond.
I think it goes to intent, opportunity, and motive. At this time, your objection will be overruled. You may proceed.
On the 23rd of March, his wife called the police department. She had locked herself in the bathroom because her husband, Mr. Mark Smith, had attempted to arm himself with a possible firearm. He was extremely intoxicated, and she was in fear that he may harm her. While we were responding to the call, we were advised that he had made statements that when we arrived, he was going to take care of us.
It's anything he says, she says, hearsay, Judge.
Objection sustained.
Did you hear Mr. Smith make any statements that day?
Yes, it is.
And what were those statements?
Those
Same
statements were-
objection.
Objection overruled.
The statements were that I don't have anything to live for. I'm not going to make it till tomorrow. He also made statements in reference to a gun safe that if we took him to a back shed,
that he would kill us motherfuckers.
Okay, and us as in,
We took that as to mean law enforcement.
what happened with Mr. Smith that day?
Evidently, he had been drinking all day from what the wife said. He attempted to arm himself at one point, and she locked herself in the bathroom. We responded. We arrived on scene. One officer spoke with Mr. Mark Smith. I was speaking to the wife. Mr. Smith attempted to re-enter his house, and due to the nature of the call, we felt that he may be attempting to arm himself to harm us, since the statement was made. It was told to us by our central dispatch that he was going to take care of us when we arrived on scene. We did not allow Mr. Smith to return back into his home. We took him and detained him at that time. Based on statements that were made, we felt that an emergency detention order was in order to be placed on him. We felt that if he was left at his residence, he posed an extreme danger to not just himself. We felt he was a danger to either his wife and or law enforcement, just because of the statements that he continued to make.
Okay.
He was belligerent, he was cussing, and at one point he did say, "Take me out to that shit, I'll show you my guns, and I'll take care of you motherfuckers."
Okay, and that day he was transported to the medical center, I understand?
Yes. that was the
And
purpose.
were you there?
Yes, I was.
And his conduct at the medical center, how was that?
At the time when we got to the medical center, he was given a dose. I'm not quite sure what the dose was. He had to be sedated on scene. His mannerisms, his violent nature caused Acadian paramedics to have to sedate Mr. Smith.
Okay, did he ever give you any indication as to why he was so upset?
I believe it's because he lost his job at Lamar University.
No further on.
Mr. Fagan,
Sure. Been with Nederland Police for 6 years? Okay. Now, you said you went out there for a disturbance at his home on approximately 6 days before this?
Yes, it was a welfare concern on the 23rd of March.
Okay. Now, while you were there, did he ever point a pistol, rifle, handgun, or you at any of your compadres?
No.
Okay. Did he actually physically have a weapon in his possession?
Not that we saw.
Okay. Now, he was obviously intoxicated. Very much so?
Very, very, very extremely.
Okay. And did his wife ever say he actually got his hands on a weapon and tried to hurt her?
Well, he attempted to, but they actually were able to lock the gun safe and take the keys where he could not get access to it.
Okay, did you just assume what the wife told you was true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, did y'all file any charges against him?
We filed the EDO as well as assault offensive touch, I do believe.
Assault, offensive touching?
Yes.
Okay.
He grabbed the wife during the course of the disturbance they were having inside of their house.
Class C misdemeanor?
I believe so, yes, sir.
And with all this talk and all this rumble about that he may hurt police officers, y'all never considered yourself to be in threat of serious bodily injury or any assault, did you?
Not at that point. That's why we placed the EDO so that he could be evaluated by a trained professional as far as his mental state.
Okay, and they kept him in the hospital?
I believe so, for less than probably 24 hours.
Okay. And the big problem is he was drinking, right?
And you could define it as that he was drinking. I mean, there was other.
Sure. But once again, we've got this incident that nobody got hurt, right?
No, because we stepped in. He attempted to re-enter his home.
And then you didn't let him do that.
No, sir.
Okay. Now, as far as owning the firearms that he's talking about, did y'all seize any firearms or try to get them in any way?
No.
Okay, and there's no nothing against the law, is there, about owning firearms and having them safe in your home? Okay. And once again, he didn't point a gun at anybody or didn't threaten to shoot you or anything like that, did he?
But he did threaten to shoot.
Okay. What did he say?
When he said, take me out to the shed, which where the weapons were, he said, I'll take care of you motherfuckers. We take that as a threat. He
Okay.
will harm us.
But did he make any overt acts to hurt you?
And at that point, he was detained
Okay,
because he attempted to re-enter his house to possibly retrieve the weapon.
okay. And but y'all didn't let him do that?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you think a lot of his attitude was belligerent because he was drunk?
Over my years, I've dealt with a lot of extremely intoxicated individuals, and their behaviors, mannerisms did not correlate with what Mr. Mark Smith did. I believe that he did pose a threat
Okay, at that time.
at any point in time. That's why an EDO was done.
Okay, that's it. But as far as what transpired on March the 29th, you don't know anything about those incidents or his conduct at all, do you?
I cannot.
Okay. And would you be surprised to find out that all the officers that came in and testified said he didn't threaten them in any way?
Objection, Your Honor.
That's.
Okay, I'll sustain the objection, make sure that, you answer, well, you ask the question
Sure,
in it has to be an interrogatory.
thank you. Have you spoken to any of the officers at Lamar University regarding the incidents of March 29th?
Just this morning.
Okay, and what did y'all talk about?
Basically what led up to him showing up at the campus with a vehicle full of firearms.
Okay. Did you talk to them about what was going to transpire once you got told to come here today?
No.
Okay. Now, did any of those officers ever tell you in your conversations that he physically threatened them in any way?
Your Honor, would object, that's gonna be hearsay even if he does. I mean, we've had the officers come in and.
Objection sustained.
Okay. So what transpired then, you don't really know?
No, sir. I can't answer to that. I was not there.
Okay, I don't have further questions.
Okay, Mr. Sheriff?
Officer, one quick question. What was the address where this happened?
2819 Gary. Okay, I don't
And,
know that.
Okay, and, you spoke with the wife?
Yes.
She spoke of him having guns?
Yes.
Uh,
A whole entire gun.
Whatever the wife says, she says he's not here, I don't object to being hearsay, I don't have a right to confront, cross-examine, things of that nature. It's all blanket hearsay.
Objection sustained.
Did you, see a gun safe?
No.
Okay. Do you know if she gave any guns to the Nederland Police Department?
As of right now, I do not know that.
Okay. Would you have any way of knowing if that occurred?
No, sir.
No further, Your Honor.
Mr. Taggart?
One quick follow-up. Did y'all seize any weapons from him that night? Okay. And if he would have used a weapon in what you would consider to be in a threatening or offensive way, you would certainly seize that weapon for evidence, would you?
Very possibly.
Yes, I don't have further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Sheriff?
No further, Your Honor. Witness may be excused.
We have nothing further.
Okay. Officer Guidry, this concludes your testimony. You're still under the rule, and you are excused, and have a blessed day.
Thank you. Everyone.
Thank you. Sure.
The state has no further witnesses.
Mr. Taggart?
Your Honor, we're not calling any witnesses.
Okay. What we're gonna do at this time, we're gonna take a brief recess, 10 minutes, and then after that, we'll give both the state as well as the defense an opportunity for argument.
Your Honor, we may also, the witnesses, if we could release them.
Yes, they are excused. Do you have any
No objection, Your
objections? Okay. Okay, we'll be in recess.
Just made it.
Do you need to work for anything like that? But how you doing, Mr. Miller? Really good. Come on. Let me step outside real quick. Or maybe I'll just go down to Judge Woods and use his potty. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Okay.
Good.
Right across there in your room.
Yeah, his family, is known down in Crystal Beach. Back years ago, one of his uncles was one of the marshals down in Crystal Beach, Joe Faggard. So, yeah. Yeah, you can see that.
I didn't know I was creating myself so much hell.
Oh,
And it just started.
yeah.
You been doing all right?
Yeah, like I said, after doing 32 years of AC work, you know,
I broke down,
when I turned 50, well, I went to the academy back in 97 when I was still working at Comfort Zone. And, yeah, I'd work all day and go to school 4 nights a week back then, you know, home 80 mesh work, you know.
huh? Yeah.
I didn't do any overtime during that year. And then in 98, I hired into the reserve in June, for 9 years as a freebie as a reserve. And then, let's see, that work comes on until 2005, I think it was. And then I went to work for Honeywell for about a year. I was working out here at ExxonMobil doing controls and stuff like that. And then, where did I go from Honeywell? Damn. Anyway, well,
You ain't getting old.
I'll be 64 next Sunday.
Well,
You and I are the same age.
Yeah, well,
basically.
I'm 63. I'll be 4 in September.
Yeah. And, see, I worked at Honeywell and, well, back in 2000, I think it was, I was working at Comfort Zone. I was stationed down at Motiva, me and a guy named Paul Hamilton.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And, we worked out at Motiva for quite a few years. And, no, I left Comfort Zone, then went to Honeywell for about a year. Then I went to work for, I went to work for KBR, Kellogg Brown Root, back in Houston. And I went all right in 05 and 06. Flew over there and lived on a base, sleeping in an air conditioned tent. They were not working on package units. Because all the little camps on base,
Good job.
Had a little mini split, ductless systems. Never worked on any of them before, until I got over there. Those are pretty cool units.
You know, I've seen those.
And then you hang over a wall and-
Great writing.
You're not one, so be careful.
I mean,
My mom texted.
You know, just kind of like.
And it's all on YouTube.
I'm sorry.
He didn't use it.
We're still live.
Okay, brother, and sister.
That's why you buy them, too.
Apparently my mom's.
Yeah, they're watching.
Because she's the one, my mom's watching and she texted me and said the mic wasn't.
Come back, it's been years that I came here, it's full time, I turned 50. I've been here 13 years. Yeah. So,
I stayed out there cleaning for 20 years. Come back.
Yeah.
I haven't tried anything, it seems like a year. This is the first contested hearing I've had in probably 10
You
years.
know,
Wow, what have you been doing? I've been working, but everything, you know, we work it out or something like that.
it was a good life.
Yeah, it's just kind of all this.
nothing.
I don't think, I was prepping for my Facebook one, I don't think you're a single
Andrew, yeah.
one of
He
them.
played
Yeah,
for us
it's like all the stuff,
two
I
times.
think maybe we're
First
gonna
time
try.
he failed his out.
Give me a couple, we're gonna have to try down the road, but there's a couple of them.
Or he didn't, I don't know what, you know.
Yeah. It wasn't
Keith
Becky,
and Marshall.
working for
Martha.
What big,
He wants me to come up and
He
he
told
said this one
Parish.
working
Working at the secretary.
He thinks I'm supposed to get picked up on Friday. He's not gonna bring in the food. I mean, he's. He's telling me.
Oh.
I knew he was gonna bring mine.
You ready? Okay. We're back on the record in cause numbers 329008, cause number 329010, cause number 329012, and cause number 329014. All four cases are styled of State of Texas versus Mark Edward Smith. We have present in court Mr. Mark Edward Smith. We also have Mr. Smith's attorney, Mr. Mark Fagger. We also have present in the court the State Assistant District Attorney, Ms. Ashley Ramos, and we have Mr. Raymond Shearing. We also have our District Attorney, Judge Bob Worther. Mr. Shearer, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor, the state would waive opening and allow the defense to.
And Mr. Faggot, are you ready?
I am from the podium.
Yes, you can just, I guess, turn the podium toward the bench, if you mind.
Your Honor, thank you for your patience with the hearing today. I think the crux of this case is on the night in question, there was a lot of speculation about something that Mr. Smith may or may not do. Okay? It's undisputed he was intoxicated. Okay? It was undisputed that he probably resisted arrest. Okay? It's undisputed that he was belligerent. It's undisputed that he probably said a few choice words. But he's already been put on bond for those alleged offenses. Okay? The purpose of bond is to make sure he's going to show up for court and do the things that the court asked for him. And right now, Your Honor, we're dealing with 4 misdemeanor cases. What you didn't hear in this threat to society stuff that I think that was the basis of some of this stuff is there he was with these weapons in the vehicle, and he never once pointed at them, at any law enforcement officer. He never once tried to hurt one of them. He never once threatened them with a firearm or in any other way. So the dangerousness of this incident, in my opinion, has been blown way out of proportion. And we're talking about 4 misdemeanor cases. What's interesting is what they may charge with in the future, or what he may do, what they may try to bring against him later is not relevant to the inquiry. Is, are these bonds sufficient for the nature of the offenses charged? And the critical component, I think, in some of this stuff, a lot of the issues that the state is concerned about is you can address with imposing bond conditions. You can impose him to be home and stay home under house arrest. You can impose that he wear an ankle monitor. You can impose he not drink. You can impose that he have an interlock device in his vehicle, okay? A lot of this stems from the not drinking. Whether or not you can constitutionally impose that he can't have guns, you probably can insert emphasis, but you may be able to ask as a term and condition of his bond that he had had guns in the home. He needs to have someone transport them to another premises for safekeeping, and he cannot have the keys or anything until his court dates are over in these cases. What's interesting, you can have whatever, he's got the UCWs for having the pistols in the car, or driving while intoxicated. Otherwise, he's got the UCW problem, but it's not illegal to have AR-47, AK-47, and it's not really illegal to own pistols. There's no limit on how much ammo you can have, things of that nature. But the critical component in all this stuff, Your Honor, is one, he didn't threaten anybody. He made no overt attempt to hurt anyone through all this, okay? What we have is a guy that probably drinks too much and sprouts off his mouth too much. But that's what that's what bonds for in DWI cases and public intox cases and things like that. There's not even a scintilla of evidence that he attempted to hurt anyone in law enforcement that night or hurt anyone at Lamar University. And that is the critical component I think they needed to show to increase the bond. And I will address some of the factors, Your Honor. The accused work record. The testimonies here, he worked for Lamar for years. Okay, he just lost his job, but he'd been gainfully employed for many years. He has a family here, even though there may be some concerns about his drinking. He does have a family that supports him. And he said he's been trying to contact the wife.
Your Honor, that's not been introduced.
That's true. Y'all take that back.
Object, yeah, objection
Okay.
sustained.
He's been a resident of Jefferson County for many years in his prior criminal record, Your Honor. The gentleman from the FBI testified they ran an NCIC on him, which is the most thorough, comprehensive background check. He didn't even come up on anything. So he has no prior criminal record. He has no prior bonds. He has no arrest record. And as far as the aggravating circumstances alleged to have been involved in offense for which the accused is committing, he's accused at this stage of DWI, unlawfully carrying a weapon, resisting arrest, and failure of ID. Those are misdemeanors. There's no felonies out there. So we'd ask the bonds, in setting the bonds, Your Honor, we'd ask that the bonds remain the same or something that the court would deem reasonable.
Mr. Sheriff?
Your Honor, I have to also thank you for allowing us to have this. In the time that I've been with the district attorney's office and been before this court, I think this is the first time I've ever actually moved to raise a bond. This is not something that is a routine thing, but this is not a routine case. I think that there are some things that have been said, and first of all, I want to reiterate that under the rules for setting bond, under Article 17.15 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, number 3 says the nature of the offense and the circumstances under which it was committed are to be considered. And that's what we're talking about today, is the circumstances. And then also number 5 says the future safety of a victim of the alleged offense and the community shall be considered. And especially in this case, I have to highlight the community. The reason we have taken these steps to ask for this bond to be raised is quite simple. Mr. Faggard so accurately pointed out that on the night of the offense, there was a lot of speculation on what Mr. Smith might or might not do. That's 100% correct, because at the night of the offense, at the time he was booked into jail, things were still a little fuzzy. Things were not drawn into focus. There were agencies that had not communicated with each other and information that they were not aware of. This was a very person that Lamar University had terminated, and the police department was not aware of that. They were not looking for him. They were anything like that. I cannot fault the justice of the peace with the bonds that were set, because in the fog of the situation, these seemed appropriate to that JP. We don't have that fog anymore. We have removed that fog. And I think Mr. Faggard so accurately said, once arrested, there was no threat to the community anymore. And that is true. That is 100% true. The defendant is no longer a threat to the community because he's under bond. The state's fear is that this bond amount is so low that all it would take is a change of heart from someone who he knows that with a credit card could go to a bonding company and the defendant would be free. Essentially what would happen then is he'd have a second chance to go out and possibly kill somebody. We heard from the Needleland officer the threats that were made against Needleland Police Department and police officers. We found out that and this is hindsight, that there were keys to Lamar University, possibly keys that would have given him access to absolutely every building on campus, that we don't know where they are. Alcohol is not a defense. Voluntary intoxication under the penal code is not a defense. The bond conditions are set out all the time. We do this all the time on different people, and the court is fully aware how often bond conditions are violated. Conditions of bond are not a guarantee to the public that they will be safe. The most chilling thing that I heard in preparing for this and in the testimony was from the female officer that first made contact. And the question was, do you have children? That to me is a person whose mind has already decided, I'm going to do something. I'm going to hurt somebody. But he only wanted to limit the damage. He didn't want to hurt children. And if she had children, he wouldn't want those children to suffer. He was not intoxicated when he talked to the FBI, but he told the FBI, I was going to hurt somebody. The FBI agent came in here and testified, and this is extraordinary. I'm sure you've probably not had FBI testify on misdemeanor cases before, but they're concerned about this man and what has happened. And even more concerning is the fact that this lack of criminal history that the defense wants to hold out as something that shows he's okay, he's safe, is the very thing that would allow him to walk out of the jail and go to a gun shop, and in a background check, there would be nothing there to show he should not be able to purchase a firearm. Even though they fill out what they call the yellow form, which asks if you're under indictment or information, if he decides to lie on that form, there is nothing to keep him from purchasing a firearm. There is nothing to keep him from going back to his house and retrieving firearms that may still be there. The state recognizes that this is one of those situations, and to use a term, a legal term that gets overused sometimes, the totality of the circumstances are, this is just not a run-of-the-mill DWI, UCW resisting and failed to ID. There was hostility that has been exhibited by this guy over the course of several days and weeks towards different races, towards different professions, towards law enforcement. And the state is asking that these bonds be reviewed. And just to throw it out there, the state is asking that each charge have a bond of $25,000.
Okay, is that it? That's it, okay. The court has reviewed and listened to the arguments and the statements that have been made in this case, and pursuant to Article 17.15, rules for fixing amount of bill. It states the amount of bill to be required in any case is to be regulated by the court, judge, magistrate, or officer taking the bill. They are to be governed in the exercise of his discretion by the Constitution and the following rules. Number one, the bill shall be sufficiently high to give reasonable assurance that the undertaking will be complied with. Number two, the power to require a bill is not to be used as to make it an instrument of oppression. The nature of the offense and the circumstances under which it was committed are to be considered. And number four, the ability to make bail is to be regarded, and proof may be taken upon this point. And number five, the safety of a victim or the alleged offense and the community shall be considered. In addition, the court in Smith versus State, 289 Southwest Second, 855, also stated some additional conditions, work record, family ties to the community, the ability to length of residency, prior criminal record, whether the defendant has previously complied with bond conditions and other outstanding bonds, and any aggravating factors in the case or in the charge offense. Now, in considering the totality of the circumstances, I think it's obvious that the circumstances of the offense is being considered here, because most of the testimony hinged around the circumstances of the offense. And based upon the testimony that was given here today, the court is going to find that there are factors that indicate that the bond in Mr. Smith's cases should be increased. And based upon that, the court is going to okay, in each case, the court is going to set bond at $50,000. And that's the ruling of the court
That's in each case or collectively?
in each case. Okay, this will conclude this hearing.